You represent the 1/3, the elite, the select, the chosen few, the very best society has produced as of yet. You are the vanguard combating the idiocy that undermines the masses. You are the garrison, the bastion, the exalted of a lost generation. You are also the first and last line of defense for a new generation. The next generation of which you will be its primary influencers. You are the standard bearers of intelligentsia. If you have made it this far, it is because you have made the ultimate sacrifice to restore the vision of a blind and dying society. Meaning you have cut through a great deal of chaff to meet me here, where I, Cerulean Gray, am now conscripting you. Welcome to Fort Gray. Consider yourselves now operatives of the Gray regime. 2/3 policy is in effect.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hoorah! Welcome back, operatives. Welcome back. Today on this fine Saturday evening, we're going to discuss something. What I have dubbed hashtag Strag Logic. But first, shout out to our most honorable BGS of the Edmore Dynasty. Shout out to our most esteemed brethren Valdez, aka the Angry Man. Shout out to the entire Black Order. No matter if it's 1619 or 2019, will still be the strongest shit on the shelf. And shout out to you, the esteemed paladins, knights, and legionnaires of the Gray regime. And you are on air with the Gray regime. I am Cerulean Gray. Our values are honor, valor, sacrifice, and esprit de corps. We do not separate ourselves amongst socioeconomic lines, class strata, sexual preference, or gender. It is black or nothing. Anything else is to be considered an act of sedition. But there is something that I do want to address. Now, yesterday I was invited to a certain Facebook group. I'm not on Facebook much. And having nothing better to do, I obliged. When I go to said Facebook group, what I noticed was there was a lot of this kind of Pockie, Ray Ray, you know, the boogeyman bashing thing. Like you created a fictional boogeyman just so you can beat him up. Now, I stand to contend against the entire argument of Pockie and Ray Ray versus Educated Lane. It is an entirely made up argument. And every time I give you the reference material that begins with a misandrist piece of literature written by Michelle Wallaces, I literally have males jumping off of the deep end this is representative of an even deeper, more serious, overarching problem that we have right here in the black community. And I titled this video Friday Black Female Facebook Fuckery Fishing for the Fuck of it. And the reason why I did is because, well, this black female fuckery does not come from black females, but from black males. And what I did with this group today was I decided to go fishing. I want to see the kind of response that I would get from the males of this group. Some males actually responded in a manner in which would be deemed appropriate. But the vast majority of the males that responded to this post used what I have dubbed #StragLogic. In which you can see what I wrote here. In which I said, either do something about Pockie or shut the fuck up. Or is Pockie just that powerful? Now, mind you, Pockie is a fiction. An archetype doesn't really exist. Now, the esteemed brethren here, Demetrius Sharp, he responded appropriately, in which he said the best thing about Pockie is that he's keeping the quote-unquote garbage pail slores or garbage pail stores occupied. This allows better men to seek out better women in peace. Keep Pockie right where he's at. And I responded to Demetrius Sharp and said, this is a proper masculine response. Yes. But that's not where it starts. I mean, like the fuckery persisted. The guy named Shai Uchiha, Will Hunter. Now, interesting thing was that I would have left this guy alone, but he persisted on something. He responds in a similar way that, you know, the previous brother responded. He said, "We ain't about to do shit about Pookie. We about to do shit about us." I would have left him alone right there. But what he decided to do, and let me stop the music, but what he decided to do was he decided to cap off that statement. I would have been fine if he would have just left it at, "We ain't about to do shit about Pookie. We about to do shit about us." I was perfectly fine right there. And then he wrote, "Black, quote unquote, America is done for." This is strag logic. And then he continued on. He said, "But one thing's that's not about to happen is us shutting the fuck up. Nah, Pookie can get trashed just like everybody else." This is my response to Will Hunter, in which I asked him, "Is it?" You know, that statement implies that you have little or no self-confidence. It is better to be honest with yourself and just say that you give up because you don't have the strength or balls. You do know that you are the community and that you carry community everywhere you go, wherever it is you go, unless you are telling me that you have accepted defeat at the hands of the gynocracy. Are you a boy or a man? And in my frustration, I said, "Damn, a lot of you dudes sound like these ratchet swirling daggles." And they do. Many of them do sound like these ratchet swirling daggles. The brother John here says, "Good point." Will Hunter comes back. He actually literally like copies and pastes like my quote over, which was uncalled for. He says, "No, it's called recognizing when something is a futile endeavor. There is absolutely no incentive and damn sure no benefit for black men who are of the quote-unquote non-Pookie alignment to continue to contribute anything to black America. There is no women in it, no respect or social support, and damn sure no money. It's time for brothers to stop being codependent and put their own interests first." And then he quotes me and says, "You do know that you are the community and that you carry community wherever you go." He says, "Yeah, you need to tell that to Pookie, not to me." See, I'm going to start putting these guys right. I'm just going to warm up the grill. You know, saute them a bit. You know, douse them with a little rub and place them right on it. He says, "No, I've accepted black America is defeated, and it's largely by its own self-destructive cultural system." I said, nigga, you are black America. Any progeny you have will be considered black. What you just told me was that you have accepted defeat. And no matter what group of females you find yourself with, that you have accepted to take a lesser position. You reek of the weakness black America must purge in order to progress. Any Negro telling me that the black community is done for, is defeated, tell the Negro to be honest with themselves and simply say, you're defeated. And then he responds again, quoting me again. For some reason, I guess he has a problem with comprehension. He said, so am I to understand that men deemed educated, quote unquote, lames should invest in a community that has no consistency, told them that they are not wanted and have no romantic outlets whatsoever? I think that's more akin to accepting defeat. The only weakness black America needs to purge is thinking it's funny that its best men are subjected to complete sex deprivation, which was interesting, and I didn't write, much more, especially when it came to the sex part, because it lets me know that this is all going back to sex as usual. Sex deprivation. Now, this guy I left alone, Sebastian Felipe Osa, he said, speaking up is doing something. I would have even accepted that as an answer. And then comes along this guy, Christopher Ruffin. He says, Will Hunter, Cerulean is quite intelligent, but he has aligned himself pretty heavily with known Pookies on YouTube. But I would dare to question, who are these Pookies? Let's be specific. He said, even going so far as to suggest arranged marriages of educated lames and single mothers to fix the familial issues within black America. I don't really give weight to anything he says regarding educated lames after I heard that. He even went on to say, laughing out loud, y'all will defend Pookie until your dying breath, but have no issue going in on black women who are a part of the very same community you say are inexplicably attached to. Will Hunter asked me, Cerulean Gray, please tell me you did not say that. Now, Cook Allen, he put this picture up. And my response, of course, is Christopher Ruffin, you've never heard me say such drivel. What I have said is Pookie doesn't fucking exist. It's a fiction made by Negroes who have absorbed 70s feminist programming and tried to repackage it as the excuse for why you so-called self-proclaimed educated lames fail with women. You niggas are blue-pilled simps. No. You niggas are Agent Smith replicas. You think you're fighting the gaynocracy, but you are championing the false archetype black feminist gynocrats of the 70s used to justify why they wanted to swirl, why they wanted to have the freedom to choose men based on fleeting sexual urges and have children and so forth and so on, while making unilateral decisions without the input or consent of their men. And when you make that fake-ass argument, all you're doing is saying, look at me, I am better than the made-up boogeyman, a.k.a. Pookie. Choose me. In which I reply, you niggas sound more like you're trying to save the gynocracy than end it. And in fact, many of you are. Now, we over here at the Gray Regime, we are advanced and adept, enlightened, above such ideals as blue pill, red pill. By now, you should be advanced and enlightened enough to understand that blue pill and red pill are simply tools. I think we're going to make our own pill called the gray pill. Yes. We're going to call it the gray pill. And what is the gray pill? To look at red pill and blue pill simply as tools to meet a certain end. Nothing more, nothing less. Christopher Ruffin says, so you all didn't dogpile on Obsidian in a live chat BGS does suggesting arranged marriages. This was sometime back in June of 2018. He says, don't play dumb now. He says, furthermore, to assert Pockie doesn't exist is the literal definition of sticking your head in the dirt and acting as if they don't exist. Until you are specific. Until you are specific, yes, Pockie and Ray Ray does not exist. Unless said person using said argument is willing to be very specific, in which you have to tell me, point Pockie out. Look out amongst the crowd and point to me the Pockie and the Ray Ray. Do not describe anecdotal characteristics. Yes, BGS. The gray pill is basically the black pill with a bit more optimism. Because as you know, black is the color of a moral pragmatism. And gray is the color of balance, truly. And that's what he said. He said, sticking your head in the dirt and acting as if they don't exist. Basically said that's what I'm doing. And I asked him, are you saying that arranged marriage doesn't work or wouldn't prevent the dysgenic mating patterns? Because when I said arranged marriage, I wasn't talking about motherfuckers with children's already Dumbledore. I was speaking of a new culture that would arise out of a great young generation. In fact, I told him to see my video on the 5 stages of organizing. And Christopher Ruffin, speaking of Will Hunter, he said, see, can't take these niggas serious. Christopher Ruffin says, Cerulean Gray, I watched it. Very well put together and informative, but fuck that arranged marriage noise. Y'all opinions regarding educated lames is null and void. And my response to Christopher Ruffin was, I've never taken you niggas seriously. Any nigga that refers to themselves as educated lames cannot be taken seriously. As if there are only 2 things black men can be. yet another manufactured fiction of the gynocracy, and you niggas let these hoes put you in that trick bag. You niggas disgust me. Read Grinch's book first, then holla at me. And then the questions come flying in, and Will Hunter says, Ruling Gray, let me ask you this. Do you think the men who engage in regressive, hedonistic, counterproductive behavior be eligible for arranged marriages? And it goes on to say, Cerulean Gray, okay, let's get a few things established. First of all, educated lames didn't start calling themselves that. It was Pookies. So, not only does he assert that educated lames didn't just start calling himself that, but the fictional boogeyman dubbed Pockie and Ray Ray started calling them educated lames. He said it was Pookies, niggas who lived through Pookie, and black women who said that. The fact that Black America has a term like that even in existence show how backwards it is. If you want to take issue at terms like that existing, then get on Pookie and them for saying that. The fact that you're more disgusted by men who are branded this horrid title asserting themselves than you are at the fact that Black America is so anti-intellectual, anti-progress, and dysgenic is downright heinous. That was Will Hunter that said that. And of course, I let them air out their grievance. And Christopher Ruffin came down and said Black America forces. He said Black America forces black men into two distinct categories, Pookie and lame. And men that would otherwise fall in between are lumped into either category. And I usually, with these kind of conversations, I usually find myself repeating myself quite often. Like people say that, oh, it's ruling you ramble on. It's not that I'm rambling on. It's just that I have to reiterate and reiterate because it's almost like it just don't get it. I say again, you are Black America, my nigga. So you are also telling me that you possess no agency of self-definition? Also, you're telling me that when you do exercise self-definition, that you choose a moniker created by these women? Come on, son. Don't tell me this is all you can be. And you niggas claim to be thinking black men. I would strongly beg to differ. And beg to differ I do. And of course, they had their run of airing out their grievances once again. He says, not that we consider ourselves educated lames, it's the moniker we were given. Can someone say strag logic? He said it was the moniker they were given. Strag logic. He said we were given, so we roll with it to take the insulting power from the word. Like Black America does with the word nigga. Would it be better if we added an A at the end? Laughing my ass off. That's what David Ruffin, he sounds a lot like David Ruffin. Must be on crack. But that's what Christopher Ruffin said. And Will Hunter followed up. It said, as an individual, I can define myself as I see fit. We're just taking a title we didn't give ourselves to distinguish ourselves from the elements of black society we do not want to be associated with. But nonetheless, black America itself is quote unquote forced men who aren't stereotypically hip into that bracket. So I use the term for the sake of narrative. So what these guys are saying is that they too are conforming. They're conforming. Christopher Ruffin corrects Will Hunter and said, Sergeant Willie Pete, I don't know who exactly that is, coined the term, and he actually considered himself one. Quote, it's just a word. You know, a lot of the low-key contempt, the self-absorbed kind of self-hatred and lack of self-confidence, self-esteem, and self-worth stems from things that we think is just a word, stems from things that we think is just entertainment, stems from things that we don't want to take seriously. You know, kind of like this thing that they say whenever, you know, it gets heated. Oh, it's just YouTube. Right? I responded, I don't care who coined the term. The entire argument is from Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman by Michelle Wallaces. And what she deemed as productive and non-productive black males, in which she asserted that black men who were leading the black civil rights and black liberation movements were non-productive males, wholly due to the fact that they didn't carve out leadership positions for black women, saying that men who led from the front during civil rights and black liberation, that men who led from the front inherently marginalized black women and their contributions. That's what she wrote. She said they were non-productive because the entire narrative was that black society could have got more done if, you know, you'd have put black women in leadership positions during, you know, civil rights movements. You know, the one where they would openly, you know, shoot down blacks in the middle of the street like dogs. And because black men acted as a shield for the group, in order to keep you safe, you know. I think some of you should actually read these books to know where these things come from. She lambasted black men who were forward thinking, saying that they, the unproductive, and that the only productive males were those who were, quote, not threatened by female leadership, end quote. That's what Michelle Wallace said. She said that only productive males, the only productive males were those who were not threatened by female leadership. Those were her words, not mine. So when you tell me these things like the black community is done, what you're telling me is that you've accepted a lesser role in this thing called black. Mind you, the book is not scholarly or empirical, but entirely anecdotal. which is why in the 70s, the late 70s, early 80s, feminists hailed it as insightful, not scholarly. They hailed it as eye-opening, not scholarly. Now, you want to read a scholarly book, you need to get Grinch God's book, The Ratchet's Rouge. That's a scholarly book. It actually uses anthropology, sociology. It actually uses the social science. There is more science in that book than there is in Michelle Wallace's 1979 Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman. Somebody shamelessly plug the link to Grinch's book in that chat. And of course, I let him have the last word. In which he said, "You niggas are so smart, you're dumb. But whatever you say, oh, esteemed Mr. Gray. Let's pretend there is no warped sense of masculinity amongst black women." And see, I decided to wait for this live stream. Since I'm only been a member of this group since yesterday. So in e-space terms, I was basically born yesterday when it comes to this group. But listen to the language. He says, let's pretend there's no warped sense of masculinity amongst black women. My question is, why the fuck are you letting women define your masculinity? All you're saying is, look at me, I'm better than him. Choose me, choose me. And of course, the end quote is kind of typically what they always do when, I bring the flaming sword to the back of that ass. He said, this conversation grows so fucking tired when y'all act so willingly obtuse. But since, a lot of these guys don't really read, this is the updated version. Now, this is a updated version of Black Macho, the Myth of the Superwoman, and the forward of this new revised version is written by none other than Jamila LePuke. You see, the forward of this book is written by Jamila LePuke. That was interesting too, like, for my mother, Faith Ringgold. Now, in this forward here, gonna hear some interesting stuff. It said, when I first picked up my mother's well-worn copy of Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman, I'd already been calling myself a feminist for about 2 years. Now, this is Jamila Lemieux's words, and had penned a scathing takedown of a commercial for a boxed macaroni and cheese that implied mothers were somehow responsible for bringing home the pasta and boiling it in a pot. I was 13. Despite the condition of the book implying that Mom had done what I would eventually do, carry the book around in my purse until it literally fell apart, I came to find out that she wasn't much of a fan of Michelle Wallace's controversial debut. A member of SNCC, otherwise known as SNCC, my mother, was then fiercely proactive of the image of the organization and its charismatic leader, Stokely Carmichael, a great man who led from the front, who would come to be known as Kwame Ture. Furthermore, like many black women of the baby boomer generation, she still had struggled with the idea of publicly accusing black men of sexism. After all, isn't the white man our true and shared enemy? Don't we have enough problems without the infighting? Wallace would release the book in 1990 with a brutally honest, updated introduction, How I Saw It Then and How I See It Now, which I read some 10 years later. In it, she took herself to the woodshed. Now, for all of you intersectionality, you intersectionalists and you feminist cuntbags and what have you, understand that in the updated version of Black Macho, Michelle Wallace literally backs down off of all of that bullshit, all of that misandry. Well, not quite all of the misandry that she was writing back in the 70s. Okay? It says in it, she took herself to the woodshed for what she considered to be misunderstandings on her part. Now, it's interesting when it comes to the argument of the unproductive male versus the productive male. You know, the one that will allow the woman to lead from the front, be in a masculine position. Funny how she's backed up off that shit in the second revision of her 1979 book. You know, the unproductive male versus the productive male. You know, the unproductive male, he was macho. He didn't, he was macho and he was misogynistic because he would not carve out a leadership role for black women during the black liberation struggle, civil rights, and what have you. That's what she said. That in the meanwhile, we still have Negroes that years beyond Michelle Wallace backing down off of all of the misandry that she helped start. You still have the Negro. And what's worse, the Negro male championing this Pockie and Ray Ray versus educated lame argument. Now, those of you who know Stokely Carmichael, you cannot say that he was an unproductive male. But back during a time when Stokely Carmichael was out on the front, this misandrous cuntbag, known as Michelle Wallace, was trying to undermine his leadership and authority. In his pursuit of making black folks whole in this country. And it spits in the face of your demographic of great black men who have come before you, whose shoulders you stand on today. Which inspired you to be able to self-define. And champion that already debunked, debased argument in which the orchestrator, the artiste, the agent provocateur extraordinaire herself, who created the entire argument, has already backed off. And yet you're telling me that you're thinking black male. No, we are the gray regime. The gray regime is a suborder of the black order. We are an affiliate branch of the black order. And here we have thinking black men. And so if you're still championing this narrow, shallow debate that is rooted in misandry, I cannot in good conscience allow you to share space with the real thinking black men. I mean, this is Jamila Lemieux. And you all know her reputation. And she's writing the foreword to this revised book. But I'm gonna fast forward this to page 20. She actually refers to, this is Michelle Wallace's words now. It says, moreover, these myths further serve to mystify the structural inability of the mainstream to admit that women's oppression and racial oppression sometimes are seen in combinations which create a third and entirely different category of problems with regard to the black women or woman, quote unquote, of color. Now, if you want to know where the intersectionality shit came from, here you have it. It says, There is the further. Now, mind you, she says that it is a myth, that she acknowledges that it is a myth. Listen to the language. It says it seems telling now. It seems telling now that I drew my final example of how black women were being metaphorically disenfranchised by the women's movement and the black movement from an article in the New York Times, a paper which I now regard as the quintessential historical document in the white phallocentric tradition. The New York Times, the key voice of this brand of liberal humanism, although it is still not unusual among white males on the left in the U.S. to think that to talk about race is automatically racist. To see or acknowledge color difference is racist. Do you know what changed between the time that she backed up off that shit and acknowledged that she had fucked up? She hit the wall. Yes, her sexual marketplace value decreased, and so now she started playing ball. And do you want to know why? Because Michelle Wallace, even back in the 70s, was a fucking strag. You know, an irredeemable ratchet that doubles down on their fuckery. That's whose argument that you're using. The argument that she backed up off of herself. Now, she backed up off of it, but you champion it. Man, these Pookies, man, these Pookies and these Ray Rays. Like, please, you're going to have to specify for me. Point out the Pookies and the Ray Rays. I don't want to hear your mythical, magical, miracle making boogeyman called Pookie or Ray Ray. See, the Black Order put down the Pookie and the Ray Ray argument. I mean, we drug the Pookie and Ray Ray argument out to the old tool shed and put her down like an old dog. And yet, you have Negroes running around here using this quote unquote Pookie and Ray Ray argument, you know, a productive versus non-productive blackmail argument. That is rooted in misandry, anti-blackmail propaganda. But just in case you needed to know more, I mean, we can cover it. This is one of the books that's in my reading list. It's called Behind the Mask of the Strong Black Woman, Voice in the Embodiment of a Costly Performance. Before we go here, we'll go to this one. This book came out in 2007 by Dr. Nicole G. Alexander Floyd. She critiques Michelle Wallace's Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman that was released in 1978 amidst a storm of controversy. Academics, political commentators, feminists and non-feminists, and even Faith Ringgold, the author's mother, criticized it. So the author's mother, Faith Ringgold, was not a strag, but the author herself was. And at least she had enough sense. Show you what this book was about. And those of you who have been reading Grinch's book, you're going to notice something when I read these lines. It says, by Black Power advocates transfigured into the ideal black freedom fighter who reads the quest for black liberation as a search for manhood and the superwoman, or stereotype of the strong black woman who is embattled, but ultimately seemingly impervious to white racism. Although the book's main focus is a critique of the sexual politics of black nationalism during the late 1960s, most critiques or critics avoided a direct attack or close reading of her argument. And the reason why, back in the 70s, it took a massive campaign to promote this book in publications like Miss Magazine. It was a mass campaign to promote this book. And the reason why is because the broader scholastic community, I'm talking about the black educated elites, when this book was peer reviewed, it did not hold up to snuff because it was rooted in anecdote and not in fact. That's the reason why it was initially rejected by the black scholastic community, even back in the 70s, because it was rooted in anecdote and not in fact. So it says, ironically, although her critique of such a popular ideological commitment as Black Power is what made this such a controversial book in the Black community, most opted to destroy the credibility of the book through attacking Michelle Wallace's character, scholarly ability, which there's no scholarship in the book at all, and priorities. Remember, I was talking about priorities, various priorities, like what's a high priority, what's a low priority. And or by raising questions about the severity of sexism in the Black communities and the priority it should receive in consideration of Black liberation strategies. Many of the book's opponents question Michelle Wallace's basic assumption, because there's nothing else. Michelle Wallace's basic assumption throughout the text that sexism was a very real form of oppression in the lives of Black women. Not in the 70s, not in the 60s, now, if you've ever read this book, you'll know that that what she means by sexism is not being able to cross the fence and get a white man. If you've actually ever read the damn book, you'll know that what the fuck she's talking about is not being able to cross the fence and get a white man. That's what she's saying in the book. That's what the fuck she meant by sexism. So I say you have to pay attention to the language. Robert Staples, for instance, argued that we could have a serious talk about sexism in the Black community if we could ever actually define it. According to Staples, most of what people identified as sexism was merely the way men had been socialized. Others emphasized and or implied that whether or not sexism was at play in the Black community, that racism was a more serious and immediate problem. Two related corollaries to this argument were that Black men were the number one object of racism. Understand, this is what brothers in the 70s are saying. This is what real thinking Black men were saying even in the 70s. While you running around here with strag logic about some fucking Pockie and Ray Ray. Created by a strag for the purpose of creating a fluffed up, over embellished justification for why she should have the right to jump the fence and jump in Brad's bed. That's what she's saying throughout the damn book. So every time you get to talking about Pockie and Ray Ray, which is basically Michelle Wallace's productive male versus unproductive male argument, in which she asserts that the only productive males were those that were not threatened by female leadership. And what she means by leadership is the ability to make unilateral decisions without the consent or input of her men. But you running around with this old strag logic. You got niggas running around here with this old strag logic, though. I want you to listen to this. Said others attacked Wallace's feminism directly, maintaining that it was a dangerous ideology alien to the Black community, which we still maintain to that today. Maintaining that it was a dangerous ideology alien to the Black community. I discussed this argumentative thread at length in chapter 4. Arguments ranged from claims that the black woman was liberated and did not need feminism, that black women were harming black men, and the black community, that white feminists were getting black women like Michelle Wallace to attack black men. And on the extreme end of this line, reasoning that Wallace was a neo-colonialist. This is what thinking black men were, this is how they were combating this shit back in the day. And what they refer to as an artistic agent provocateur. Words that you just heard me use. Well, not the artistic side. With possible links to Gloria Steinem, and we will get into Gloria Steinem, and to the CIA. A third major complaint, stated directly or implied, was that the book was simply not sound. And when it's not sound, that means that it's not rooted in fact, that there is no factual basis, that it is without merit. But let's address that CIA thing, right? Let's address that CIA thing. For those of you who don't really know, this is a publication that was produced by the Red Stockings. They were a radical feminist group back in the 60s and the 70s. Well, they really started out in the late 50s, 60s, and 70s. It says what follows is a fact sheet about Gloria Steinem's operations against the various social and political movements in America, particularly her role in creating a hateful and virulent strain of black feminism that attacks black men while partnering with the white establishment. See, when you talk about the strag, you understand something. You understand, if you read Gritz's book, you probably already know all this. It says Gloria Steinem first came across the radar of black men in 1978 when Steinem put a book called Black Macho. What? They say Steinem and not actually Michelle Wallace. But it says Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman on the cover of Miss Magazine. The magazine which was controlled, which she controlled. Now, if you don't know about Miss Magazine was created by two females. One was Gloria Steinem, who was then a CIA agent, and a black woman named Dorothy Pittman Hughes. Dorothy Pittman Hughes was being used by Steinem to be an attack dog against black males. Says the book was written by a black feminist and activist named Michelle Wallace, who came out of nowhere. Wallace was in her early 20s at the time, yet she was being touted as the leader of black feminism. In the book, Wallace called abolitionists like Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth ugly and stupid for supporting black men. She called black revolutionaries chauvinist macho pigs and advised black women to go at it alone. Gloria Steinem said what Wallace's book would define as the future of black relationships. You know, all of that goofy shit that you hear Obsidian saying is that we don't get along. Why don't we get along? Well, when there's a concerted effort to create massive propaganda campaign to ensure that you fucking don't. While incentivizing your women to create or to be or to make unilateral decisions without your input or consent. And you're telling me that you're a scholar, though, right? You're an amateur journalist, and you don't know this. And she pushed hard to make sure the book received massive publicity. Gloria Steinem's work triggered a flood of hate black men books and films and continues to this day. I'll sit this right there. Excuse me. Come in. What? So Gloria Steinem makes sure that this book is all over the place, plasters it, every major publication, gets Michelle Wallace all these various interviews in places that literally degreed, tenured, accomplished, and established black scholars being pushed into academic obscurity, while the work of this 20-something disobedient, overly entitled strag gets plastered all over the media. For those of you who don't know what this is, this was actually the latter tale of what you know as Operation Mockingbird. And now you understand why that's in a lot of the disclaimers that I do in my standalone videos. Especially if you are a colorblind, interracial dater, swirler, rugged individual, coon, bed bug, bed witch, Negro, mockingbird who pairs white supremacist talking points, or a flying monkey of Oz. All conditions would make you irreparably derelict. It says Gloria Steinem's work triggered a flood of hate black men books and films that continues to this day. Needless to say, some were quite suspicious of Miss Magazine and Gloria Steinem. Why was Steinem sticking her nose into the affairs of the black community? So people started doing some research on Steinem. And when it came out that Gloria Steinem was probably the ghost writer of the book with Michelle Wallace's name on it, Wallace had a nervous breakdown and went into hiding for 2 years. However, the damage was already done. The hate black men narrative, the niggas ain't shit narrative, was already in full swing. But the research into Steinem's background continues, findings of many different researchers. Bottom line, the so-called black feminist movement was created and manipulated by the CIA from the very beginning. Similar to the crack epidemic. The only difference between black revolutionaries and black feminists on the issue is that the black revolutionaries know they were infiltrated and manipulated. But black feminists are still unwilling to admit that they were infiltrated and manipulated, largely because they are highly invested in the hateful brand of black feminism. As a result, the black men ain't shit or hate black men movement has become more than just a political point of view. It is now the central part of the culture. Of black women, and this fact has led to the destruction of the black revolution and the complete distortion of black relationships, and the CIA had a direct hand in creating this situation. You know, Pockie and Ray Ray. Oh, you think it's okay to shit on your own demographic as long as you make a boogeyman for it. You know, as long as you make a straw man you can light on fire. But you're telling me you're thinking black men, though. Says the facts surrounding Gloria Steinem's CIA operations are as follows. Fact: Gloria Steinem is a CIA agent, and everything she has ever done throughout her adult life has been under the direction of the CIA. Fact: Gloria Steinem was recruited into the CIA before she even graduated high school. Fact: Gloria Steinem, who was from a poor and dysfunctional family and lived in a house without running water, was able to attend the elite and expensive Smith College. After she graduated, she spent 2 years in India spying for the CIA. She received a Chester Bowles student fellowship to study in India. This was a fellowship created by the CIA to cover Steinem's expenses in India. No one has received a Chester Bowles student fellowship either before or since Steinem received one. Fact: one of Gloria Steinem's first missions for the CIA was to manipulate the student movement. Most people are still unaware that the National Student Association was created, funded, and manipulated by the CIA. Steinem did this by organizing student festivals in Europe in the 1950s and the 60s. Steinem used the students' festivals to spy on students for the CIA, and she likely used the festivals to recruit new agents for the CIA. A second and more successful mission was to shift the orientation of the women's movement and splinter the Black Revolution of the 1960s. That was her mission, given to her by the CIA. Fact: in 1958, Cord Meyer, head of the CIA's International Organization Division, otherwise known as the IOD, had a plan. The agency would provide discreet funding to an informed group of activists who would constitute themselves as an alternative American delegation to the festival. The CIA would not only pay their way, but also assist them to distribute books and publish a newspaper in Vienna, amongst other individuals. Meyer and his colleagues hired Gloria Steinem to work with them. Steinem had recently returned from a 2-year stint in India. In 1958, fact: Steinem was recruited by the CIA's Cord Meyer to direct the informal group of activists, now called the Independent Research Service. This was part of Meyer's Congress for Cultural Freedom, which created magazines like Encounter and Partisan Review to promote a left liberal chic to oppose Marxism. It was this operation that Steinem's student festivals was part of, besides spying on students, Steinem also acted as an agent provocateur, helping to provoke riots all over Europe, right here in America. Fact, commenting on the CIA-controlled student festivals organized by Gloria Steinem, Sheila Tobias, an unwitting participant on one such trip who later taught women's studies at Cornell University. If you don't know, Cornell University, this is a fact, it's the first university to actually teach women's studies, which is just feminism by another name. Said the CIA was interested in spying on American delegates to find out who in the United States was a Trotsky or a communist. So we were a front, and as it turned out, quoted by Marcia Cohen in The Sisterhood, 1988. That is what is known as a source. Fact, further information, Steinem CIA operations working through C.D. Jackson and Court Meyer. Steinem set up an organization in Cambridge, Massachusetts called the Independent Service for Information on the Vienna Youth Festival. She obtained tax-exempt status, and Jackson helped her raise contributions from various American corporations, including American Express Company, a documented CIA money laundering operation, but most of the money came from the CIA to be managed by Jackson in a special account. The entire operation cost in a range of $85,000, a considerable amount in those years. In fact, Gloria Steinem was considered a CIA whiz kid. A CIA operative named Samuel Walker, who made a career out of publishing and became the president of Walker & Co., a New York publishing firm, founded in the same year as a CIA-funded Publications Development Corporation, worked well with Steinem. Now, you don't know who Walker Publishing is? Walker Publishing is one of the companies that the CIA actually conscripted journalists from for Operation Mockingbird in the 50s. Okay? Fact, Gloria Steinem's name keeps showing up in projects associated with CIA operations. For example, from Kai Bird's The Chairman, John J. McCloy, and the Making of the American Establishment, New York, Simon & Schuster, page 199. In the summer of 1959. For those of you who don't know what happened in 1959, well, just a year before that, what was known as the Selma bus boycotts happened. So she was working fast to undermine you. So when I tell you that it is impossible to talk about the establishment, it is impossible to talk about Red Pill without talking about this white woman. And the only proper way to talk about this white woman is from a policy-based argument. Well, Gloria Steinem was helping a lot of the anti-black male rhetoric, policy, being established by no less your own women back in the 50s. So when you telling me that you red pill, cause fuck these black bitches. It's like, oh, yo, so you think that You think that your solution is to get a white bitch? When I'm clearly showing you that this white bitch holds court in the absence of the white male. Carries out the white male's edicts. But you thought that, you thought you could escape. But you blue pill for white people, though. So even a lot of you call this thing called white supremacy the boogeyman. You don't really understand how military operations go down. And that's why I say a lot of you niggas disgust me. That's why we have the gray pill, because we understand that the red pill is nothing but a tool. But if you're going to be red pill, you got to be red pill all the way around. No pussyfooting when it comes to these non-black women. What you think that they don't show you their representative too? Because Gloria Steinem did. Fact. When this covert operation was revealed by Ramparts magazine in 1967, Steinem told New York Times that she approved the agency's role. I was happy to find some liberals in government in those days who were far-sighted and cared enough to get Americans of all political views to the festival. Steinem's definition of a liberal then included such young men as, get this, Zbigniew Brzezinski. Oh, do you know who that is? Zbigniew Brzezinski. Now, if you don't know anything about the CIA has never had a female director. It is, by all intents and purposes, a patriarchal structure top to down. And here you have a white woman playing a shell game with black women talking about some down with the patriarchy, right? While she's carrying out the dictates of the white patriarchy. And why is that? Because she understands that the comforts, the leisures, the privileges that women enjoy only come at the cost, sacrifice, and labor of men. And she will do anything to keep those said luxuries. Even the bidding of her white patriarch, as you've seen, she has. Now, I want you to listen to this. This is a fact. Gloria Steinem dated J. Stanley Pottinger for 9 years. Pottinger was in charge of sabotaging civil rights enforcement at the Justice Department. He was Assistant Attorney General under President Nixon. Now, when you understand '71, France forces America off the gold standard. Nixon formally issued a statement taking America off the gold standard. And also in 1971, began what was known as the War on Drugs. Now, Nixon's director of personnel was a man named John Ehrlichman. You can look him up. John Ehrlichman is the guy that just recently, last couple of years ago, is caught recorded on camera saying that the war on drugs was a war on blacks. And it was all headed by this guy, Stanley Pottinger, who was what? The assistant attorney general. Okay? He was the assistant attorney general. And this is the woman who dated the assistant attorney general. It was Gloria Steinem. This Gloria Steinem, she dated this guy while telling black women, down with the patriarchy. Here she is, working for the patriarchy, the CIA, it's a patriarchal structure, dating one of the white patriarchs, helped assisting the sabotage of the civil rights movement. This is why during Operation Mockingbird, we shall overcome your non-violent response. That's the reason why that got more airtime. Than the armed defense section that was being led by then most honorable Malcolm X. And the CIA put their hat in the ring with King. And when King turned left on the Big Six, that is when he's assassinated on the balcony of the hotel. Gloria Steinem dated Henry Kissinger. This is a fact. An international war criminal, establishment technocrat, and a longtime CIA operative for years. Why would a radical feminist date someone who is considered a mass murderer by everyone in the movement? You be the judge. This is all, now, she dated him all the while the feminists were trying to co-opt civil rights with anti-war protests. It's a cold game. They are trying to co-opt civil rights with anti-war protests. And she's dating the guy who started it all, right? Now, when speaking of red pill, I want you to listen to this fact. Gloria Steinem's fake literary career was conceived and executed by the CIA's quote unquote matrix operatives. By the CIA's matrix operatives. One of Steinem's CIA colleagues was Clay Felker in the early 1960s. He became an editor at Esquire and published articles by Steinem, which established her as the leading voice for the CIA manipulated feminist movement. In 1968, as publisher of New York Magazine, Felker hired Steinem as a contributing editor and then editor of Miss Magazine in 1971. Warner Communications. Also known as Time Warner, a known CIA front, put up almost all of the money, although it took 25% of the stock. And Miss Magazine's first publisher was Elizabeth Forsling Harris, a CIA-connected PR executive who planned John F. Kennedy's Dallas motorcade route. Huh? You hear that? No, but I could literally drop the mic right there. That's who Miss Magazine's first publisher was the woman who planned John F. Kennedy's Dallas motorcade route. Despite its anti-establishment image, Miss Magazine attracted advertising from the cream of corporate America. It published ads for ITT. You still see ITT commercials on TV today, which is a CIA-supported cooperation which helped engineer Operation Chaos in Chile, which led to the CIA overthrow of the democratically elected government in Chile. You know, it's interesting. Because last week we did a story about one of the biggest drug busts in U.S. history going down in Philadelphia, did we not? And that boat came from Chile. So it lets you know CIA still running shit in Chile. Operation Chaos in Chile. Last week we talked about the story of the largest coke bust in U.S. history. It happened in Philadelphia, over 30 tons of it. And the article said there was at least, between 17 to 30 tons more of it in the hull of the ship, right? That boat came from Chile. So what does that let me know? That lets me know that the CIA is still running shit in Chile. But not only are they still running shit in Chile, that they're still operating the same way that they did during the crack epidemic. So it tells you that cocaine bust, they had every intention on putting that cocaine into the black community before Well, the shit was seized. I mean, and this list goes on, and it 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 goes on. Your Pockie and Ray Ray argument was created by the CIA. Its origins are in anti-black male misandry created by the CIA's Matrix Division that creates these hit pieces, like black identity extremists. And you're running with it, and you're helping spread the anti-black male misandry. Every time you talk about, oh man, Pockie and Ray Ray, it's the same fucking argument. And you're giving it a whole bunch of shine too, you see. And this is the last thing that I am going to go to, because a lot of you don't really understand the strong black woman concept, implications for research and practices by Patricia J. Tillman Meekins, Dr. Patricia J. Tillman Meekins. A dissertation submitted in partial fulfillment of the requirements for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy, Nursing in the University of Michigan, 2017. These are the people that peer reviewed this dissertation. Associate Professor Denise M. St. Arnault, Assistant Professor Patricia W. Coleman Burns, Associate Professor Bonnie M. Haggerty, Associate Professor Daphne C. Watkins. They were the doctoral committee for this dissertation. Now, what is Dr. Meekins saying in this article, in this dissertation? I mean, let's look at some chapters. Let's go back up a little bit. Scoping framework, we'll talk about that. Samples of women and studies. Definitions of strong black woman. Relationships between strong black woman and depression, which we definitely need. We probably should start with page 19. Now, what is this dissertation stating? Dr. Meekins is basically saying that the whole idea of a strong black woman thing is mental illness. That's what her dissertation is implying. Is that if you buy into the whole strong black woman thing, it is because you are mentally ill. Okay? Now, I'm going to skip down to page 19, relationships between strong black woman and depression. Those are all her sources, references. Relationship between strong black woman and depression. Quantitative studies. If you don't understand, you probably should look up the word quantitative. Relationships between strong black women and depression were inconsistent. The result for the relationship between stress and depressive symptoms, so that the greatest levels of depressive symptoms were reported by participants with both the greatest stress levels and the highest strong black women endorsement. You know, those who go around purporting themselves as a strong black woman, that the stress levels and depression symptoms were highest in those women. Says Watson and Hunter's strong black women's schema significantly predicted higher depression scores. Reported a significant positive relationship between depression and the strong black woman endorsement, such that increased levels of affect regulation predicted increased levels of depression and expression. Woods, 2013, reported that the strong black woman archetype total score and the mask of strength and caretaking subscales were significantly correlated with depressive symptoms. But the self-reliance subscale was unrelated to depressive symptoms. So, we talk about the Ratchet Rouge. You know what rouge is, right? You know, Grinch explained it to you. You know what rouge is. It's the makeup. It's the mask. So you can completely be self-reliant without the fallacy of being a strong black woman. Oh, you can be self-reliant without the Ratchet's Rouge. This is empirical. Now, I just wanted to set that on your lap a little bit. Because when you're talking about the Pockie and the Ray Ray versus the educated lame, which is an argument created by a strag, which is a mentally ill motherfucker that buys into the illusion of strong black womanhood. Hashtag strag logic. I told you. This is empirical. This is an empirical study done by a woman who had her dissertation peer-reviewed in order to set a stage to show that this idea that you call a strong black woman is mentally ill. That's why even back in the 70s, it was the myth of the superwoman, i.e. the archetype of the strong black woman, which she did the empirical study that shows that it leads to depression and mental fucking illness. And she got her doctorate degree. So congratulations to my esteemed Dr. Meekins, who in 2017 got her doctorates through self-examination. And yes, she is a black woman. I told you, I'm one of the few people in black YouTube that is truly unfuckwittable when it comes to this. You run around here talking about, man, Pockie, Ray Ray. Oh, man, you just... No, you have self-absorbed the strag psyche. Like... You're carrying on the black female fuckery. Black man, not only are you using the same strag logic that the strag herself backed the fuck off of, but was known to be co-opted, conscripted, orchestrated by the CIA to create a dysfunctional reality for black men, and you're using that shit. And I just showed you the empirical data. This lady here, her work is peer reviewed. I read you the source, I read you the names, who peer reviewed it, other associate, assistant professors, Dr. Meekins. This is her dissertation in which the medical field agrees there is definitely a significant link to this idea of the strong black woman and mental illness. And the funny shit about it is in you niggas that's running around here with your made up boogeyman, i.e. Pockie and Ray Ray, self-proclaiming yourselves as educated lames, as if you have no agency to self-define. You suffer. Yes. You suffer from the same mental illness. You acting like a strong black woman. It's because you suffer from strag logic, and that is why you cannot share space with us over here at the Black Order, the Gray Regime, the Upmore Dynasty, where the real thinking black men are. I told you. I'm one of the few in the black manosphere who is truly, when it comes to this, unfuckwittable. I could run around and call myself the bah, but no. I want to say gratitude for joining us this wonderful Saturday evening. And as always, we end with the words of our esteemed and revered elder, Dr. Amos Wilson, who said, and I quote, "Only when you," in other words, the emphasis on you, to look at yourselves as a nation, can you change things. And I, Cerulean Gray, have the full confidence of this nation and in the strength and the might of this black man, that you not only have been, but will be the vehicle that keeps making change. And with that, we say salute to the nation. Fort Gray, over and out.